Hello and welcome to Notcast 238. Today, 9th of October 2022. Normally I do two a week, although to be fair, there's not really a schedule. I tend to do them whenever I feel like them. And this week I didn't do one in the middle of the week because I was seeing a band and I went to see Suede at the Camden Electric Ballroom. I think these Notcast originally when they started off, which was I think it was 2 years ago tomorrow, actually, which is pretty surprising. It was largely as a way of being able to talk about the things that I loved without actually being in the same room as people that put up with me whilst I talked endlessly about bands and things. So now that obviously I'm able to leave the house and able to go and see my friends and go and see shows and stuff, um, thinking, oh, instead of going to see Suede, I'll go and film a video. Go and see Suede seems more fun to me, though. Of course, as you've probably noticed, one of my favourite bands. They're in my top two. I think I would put it at now. Top two, yes. I'm sure you can guess who the other one is. And if you can't, surprisingly, I've only done one Notcast about them. So there you are. Today, instead, I'm taking a break from usual programming. I had planned on talking about another band, but a couple of records I ordered haven't arrived in the post, which is surprising. I thought I'd had them, and then when I looked, I realised I hadn't, and they'd been in my brother's record collection. And since I don't live with him, obviously I had to go and order them, and they haven't arrived yet. So I'll do that one later. Today, I am talking about the films of Quentin Tarantino, as you probably know. In total, he's directed somewhere between 9 and 11 films, depending on your point of view, and there are six very closely related films that he's been involved in. And I'll have to come at the rankings from two perspectives. One, the films he hasn't directed, and one's the films that he has. So, as the guy from Spinal Tap said, enough of my yakking, let's boogie. So here we go. I'm gonna go and start right off with number 17 or number 6 on the producer's count, and that is Destiny Turns on the Radio. Now, surprisingly, Destiny Turns on the Radio has never made it to DVD. It's never made it to Blu-ray. It's only been available on VHS and Laserdisc, and I think you can stream it on Paramount. I haven't seen it since the 90s. I don't have much memory of it. Quentin plays a fairly big role in it, but it's an acting role, not a writing role. And so, as far as I'm concerned, it was both unmemorable and not hugely invested in him. So, with that to one side, number 17, Destiny Turns on the Radio. Or if you want to think about it another way, number 6 out of the movies that I've got in the side projects category. Number 5 then is Killing Zoe, which is, I think, a 1993 heist movie that was filmed in Paris about a bank heist. I think it was born out of the same conversations that had Reservoir Dogs birthed in it, which was about people going, they don't really make great heist movies anymore, do they? To which the answer is, of course, no, they don't. And Reservoir Dogs being a film about everything but the heist, Killing Zoe is more about the heist than anything else. At the time that Reservoir Dogs came out, it was difficult to see in the UK, but there was a lot of air about it. There was a lot of talk about it, and there was a lot of ideas that people were going to be imitators were going to come out of the woodwork, like any great director. Much when Star Wars hit, and there was a huge amount of films with things like Battle Beyond the Stars and stuff like that came out afterwards. It was easy for Killing Zoe, I'm afraid to say, to get lost in the shuffle of everything else. It was directed by Roger Avery, who was a close friend of Quentin Tarantino, worked with him, I think, at the video store. This is effectively the heist from Reservoir Dogs, but transposed into Paris with different categories and different actors. It's really good. It's dark, super violent, quite fun, but it's not amazing. It's just a very, very good 90s heist movie. And that, by the way, is a compliment. So, number 15. Well, actually, more correctly, number 4 on the list, because we've now outranked the bottom ranking of Quentin's movies. Number 4 on the solo project list is Sin City. I saw this the other week. I really enjoyed it. It's an adaptation of a graphic novel with a very specific graphic style that was hugely influential on a complete bag of shit movie called The Spirit, which managed to get everything right but say absolutely nothing. Quentin directed a scene or two in this. This has been directed by I think Robert Rodriguez, who is closely associated with Quentin as well. The two have worked together on a number of occasions. We'll hear of at least 2 of them coming up. It's a I think it's a really good film, but it's very much it's quite juvenile. A lot of Quentin's movies are actually quite juvenile, in so much as they don't deal with adult concepts in an adult way, if that makes sense. A lot of the films deal with things like revenge and extortion and escape, but they do so in quite a superficial manner. There's obviously an emotional undercurrent to them, but you will never get a film about a relationship quite as good as Lost in Translation, as I suspect you would out of Quentin Tarantino, unless of course the relationship is between a man and his gun. No, Sin City, very good. I like it, but not great. Number 3 on the list of solo projects then is perhaps surprisingly Natural Born Killers, the Quentin Tarantino written film directed by Oliver Stone. Here is the unrated director's cut from America. It actually has a lot of similarities with True Romance, if that makes sense, in so much as both the films are about a couple that travel across a country. They have a killing spree. Natural Born Killers is motivated by the fact that they're just killers, and that's what they do. That's the thing. Whereas True Romance is obviously a dorky, geeky guy that's very clearly based upon Quentin Tarantino, that somehow finds a bag of drugs that everybody forgot and then goes off and tries to make his life out of it, and it doesn't quite work. There is a fan edit, by the way, of True Romance, which I'll talk about when we get to that point. But Natural Born Killers is I think it's quite good. Again, you can clearly see if it hadn't been Quentin Tarantino writing it, someone would have gone, he's ripped off everything that you've ever done, sue him. But of course, how can you rip yourself off? I don't know. It's a good film. It's aged very well. In fact, in the UK, it didn't get a VHS release. So I saw it at the cinema. And then the next time anyone in the UK could see it was when it was shown on Channel 5 television at 9 o'clock at night. So for some reason, it was good enough to show on television, and it was acceptable to show on television, but not on retail VHS. Pretty weird, isn't it? Number 2 on my Quentin Tarantino adjacent list here is From Dusk Until Dawn. From Dusk Till Dawn. I think this is really good. Again, saw it at the cinema. It's effectively 2 films. One is a jailbreak movie with Quentin Tarantino and George Clooney. The other one is where all of a sudden it turns into some kind of bonkers bugnuts horror movie with a huge amount of Christian fundamentalism. Of course it's tasteless, but at the same point it is a really enjoyable ride. It doesn't claim to be anything more than a cheeseburger, and it's very good at that. It also has a line that has stuck with me forever throughout my life, which is, "Are you such a loser you can't tell when you're won or when you've won?" Primarily because I've known people that even at the point where they've won, they still think that they haven't won, and it's like, what more do you bloody want? How much do you need? When can you recognise that actually you've beaten this, you've won? So that's number 2 on the solo projects selection. Number 1 is, and I don't have a separate release of this, True Romance, directed by Tony Scott, Ridley Scott's brother. I love this film. It's a really interesting, unusual take upon a romance, and there's a fan edit which resets the structure of the film. So this film is very linear in its construction. There's a fan edit that presents it in a way that's a completely different experience that ties up with Quentin's original script. Really good film. Again, film criticism, I'm just going to go, oh, it's really good, yeah. So we're on to the Quentin Tarantino directed stuff here, of which I have 11 titles, one of which may surprise you. It is number 11. Now, were I ranking all of these together, this would very definitely come at number 17 by a very long margin. It is CSI Grave Danger. 2 episodes of a television show. I don't like the CSI TV show. In fact, I don't like a lot of crime procedurals. So already it's at a disadvantage. Sorry, guys. Secondly, what it shows is that if you take away the stylistic choices in influence and control that Quentin has, he's a very good director, but he's not able to show you his personality. Grave Danger, parts 1 and 2, are excellently shot pieces of television, excellently edited, very well constructed, but it doesn't feel like Quentin Tarantino. It feels like watching Michael Mann's LA Takedown. A very competent piece of crime television, but not particularly good. And it does copy, or perhaps revisit a common theme from Kill Bill, which is that, that of being, buried alive, and how you cope with that and what people do to cope with that. So CSI Grave Danger, you don't need to seek this one out. Incidentally, I bought this from a shop called CEX on Friday, and when I bought it, the guy, he picked it up and he was like, he laughed, and I completely understand that. And I was like, Quentin Tarantino directed 2 episodes. It might be awful, but I've never seen them. I'm going to find out. Didn't really pass comment on it beyond that. But of course, if the staff at CEX laugh at you when you buy it, which is the first time that's ever happened to me, you do kind of think, okay, maybe that one's hot garbage. CSI Grave Danger, terrible. Number 10, and though he has directed a part of this, this isn't actually a film, 4 Rooms. This hasn't made it onto Blu-ray, and I don't suspect it ever will. It's an anthology film, in the days when anthology films were a thing, and it features 4 short films, each about half an hour in length. 4 Rooms, and the last one is directed by Quentin Tarantino, which features Bruce Willis and a couple of other people in a room with Tim Roth as the bellboy there, just kind of trying to, he takes the concept of room service one step a little bit too far, and has to administer and administrate a challenging challenge, which effectively revolves with somebody losing a body part. It's not particularly good. I mean, to an extent, it was the first thing that he made after Pulp Fiction, so you have a degree of performance anxiety there. He's then going and doing a 20-30 minute short movie as part of an anthology. Is a very nice way of sidestepping all the expectations that people would have. And his segment on 4 Rooms it feels like competent high budget television, as opposed to anything that Quentin Tarantino I think felt particularly strongly about. So we're into the major movies now. So my least favourite movie of his, it features on this Grindhouse, is Death Proof. This is a one-note movie, Death Proof, and the idea being behind of it being a guy that's a stuntman, that's a serial killer, that has a death-proof car that kills women in car accidents. It's bizarre, strange. It's very one-dimensional. Now, there are 2 cuts of Death Proof, by the way. There is the full-length version that was released in the UK as a standalone movie in the cinemas. I saw that at the Ritzy in Brixton in 2007 because nowhere else was showing it that was near me. I live down south, so I actually went after work on a Friday evening and got home late, but it was the only place I could see it because the nearest cinema showing it to me was 50 miles away, which is pretty bonkers, really. It was a standalone movie, and I must admit that the longer version, the version which is on the standalone release of Death Proof, is boring. There's too much chat about too much rubbish and not enough actually happening. Car chases, excellent, really good. Rest of the film, not so great. It's very difficult to see what was Quentin trying to say here. What ideas was he exploring? And I can't really work that out. I mean, like a number of his films, in fact, you think about pretty much 2/3 of the films that he's made, the main plot emphasis is actually around revenge for something which happened to a person which was undeserved. Death Proof has got that in spades, of course, because it's about 3 women that take revenge upon a man, and the man being a killer. But again, it's very one-dimensional, and it doesn't have the depth of I think maturity is probably the wrong word, but it doesn't have the depth of narrative strength to propel itself to be a full-length movie. It feels like a TV episode that's been pushed out to movie length, and it's not great. So Death Proof, yep, that's okay, but that's number 9 on my list of Quentin Tarantino movies. Number 8, and perhaps the most recent one that you will recognise, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I quite like this. It's an interesting film. It does a sense of historical fantasy in so much as what it portrays is events that didn't actually happen the way that they're meant to portrayed, or the way that they were meant to be. I think it's got some great characterization in it. Brad Pitt's character is fabulously laconic. Leonardo DiCaprio plays a washed-up 60s action movie star who's facing the end of his career, and jobbing his way through certain things. It's a love letter to cinema written by a man whose best friend was probably the silver screen. And whilst I rate it highly, there's nothing about it which makes me think it's exceptional. It's got some really interesting stuff in it, but the film itself also doesn't have a plot as such. There's a series of events, there's things that happen, and then there's a thing that happens at the end. And the thing that happens at the end, oh, I should tell you because the film has been out for 3 years now, so it's not a spoiler. Is that the characters that are involved in this, Brad Pitt and Leonardo DiCaprio, find themselves in the midst of the Sharon Tate murders in 1969, committed by Charlie Manson, and revisit that from a slightly different perspective. But it's not part of the plot as such. It's a mistake or an accident that happens in the movie. It's not the logical conclusion of all the other events that are happening. A door opens, some people walk in, and suddenly you realise, this is the end of the movie now. And there was not much in the way of a kind of indication that was going to happen. So actually, it's pretty lazy narrative plotting, in so much as most narratives set up a series of dominoes and then you spend the film watching them fall. This film doesn't do that at all. It's a set of events that happen, and then all of a sudden there's a thing that happens at the end, very similar to a random car crash that you would get at the end of a season, or perhaps Dynasty's famous Red Wedding. Where everybody got murdered and the people that died or were the ones that wanted too much money to come back for the next season. I like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. It's fun, it's breezy, it's a laugh, but it's like a packet of crisps of a movie. It's not a meal, and it's quite good in that respect. So number seven. So number seven. This is where all of the films start to become really, really good, really strong. It is Django. Now, as a kid, I remember watching BBC Two showing cheap programming late at night, films like Django Unchained, Django's Revenge, all those type of things. I was very similar to Quentin in many, many ways, in so much as I had an insatiable appetite for movies and I had a very sated budget, which meant that the films that I watched were the ones that were on television and not the films that I wanted to watch. I was dictated to by what was on the BBC Two's Videodrome series, which was presented by Alex Cox. So, if this hadn't been called Django, by the way, I would have said it should have been called Django because it takes the thematic elements of a man living alone in the midst of the Wild West and extrapolates out through them a hugely different story. Now, this, like a number of the other movies, again, Death Proof, Django, Hateful Eight, Kill Bill, Inglorious Basterds, they're all films about revenge, about somebody that has been done a wrong to and how they are going to get their just desserts for it. Now, the argument is living well is the best revenge, whereas I think for Django, the philosophy is probably dying in a bloody heap on the floor repeatedly and painfully is the best revenge indeed. So this is a film that I think unapologetically exposes some of the horrors of slavery, which I am not vastly familiar with. As a concept, it's repugnant. I find it awful, and it's just there's no way that anybody that would be a slave owner could be, in my opinion, morally redeemed unless they repented completely and quickly. So Django is effectively a revenge fantasy of a human being reclaiming his rights from the people that tried to oppress him. It's powerful. Jamie Foxx plays an excellent role. Should have been nominated for it. I think was it Hans Lander? I think he's in this as well. I think he is. Anyway, oh no, he isn't. No, it's Christoph Waltz. Sorry, that shows you how much. So Christoph Waltz is wonderful as a dentist. It has some very interesting concepts around ownership and dignity and control and repression in there. If you've ever been in a situation where perhaps you wanted to show more emotions that you could, but you couldn't because the repercussions could be awful, that's a situation I've been in. Django is a film that will speak to you. If it's a film about having to hide your love because of the way that society will judge you, Django is a film for you. If you just want to watch racist motherfuckers get murdered in a very bloody fashion, Django is the movie for you. And of course, Django, Inglorious Basterds, those two films are that now their political colours pretty clearly to the mast, which is Nazis and slavery are bad guys. So if you like Quentin Tarantino and you're super uber right wing, you might want to rethink that because hang on a minute, are we the baddies? Yes, you bloody well are. That's how it works. So that's number 7. Number 6 is perhaps more common. This is a film that really was his calling card to the world. It was Reservoir Dogs. Taking its hint from Killing Zoe, Reservoir Dogs is the film where you see everything but the heist. I saw this film for the first time. I think it was called. I can't remember which one it was now. I saw it in Leicester. It was on a Friday night, 11:15. Finished about 1 o'clock. I walked home. It was a late night showing, in the days when cinemas would do late night showings, and they would normally show weird, esoteric, fucked up shit that you wouldn't normally see in your standard exhibition catalogue. So, for example, Friday nights at the cinema, I would watch Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer, Reservoir Dogs, Koenigsegg, that type of stuff. I'd watch stuff that I thought was meant to be good, and sometimes it was, and sometimes it wasn't. And Reservoir Dogs definitely was. So this is a film, obviously the film that launched a million dudes in suits thinking they're being original. The film that made Stuck in the Middle with You and Little Green Bag, songs that get played at weddings, those type of things, and guys thinking they're cool and hip and edgy. But really, at the time I saw this, none of that was in play. What was in play at this point, by the way, was that it was a really exciting crime film that lots of people were talking about that was meant to be excellent. And again, Reservoir Dogs plays with the concept of knowledge and understanding and information, and like a number of Quentin's films, it presents the events in a non-linear way in order to heighten the drama that you have of it. So Pulp Fiction, for example, if you watch that in a chronological fashion, it loses all its effort because the ending of the film doesn't feature, John Travolta riding off into the sunset. It features Zed's dead and the drive. That's where that film goes if you watch it from a chronological fashion. Reservoir Dogs, if you knew right from the off who the cop was, then the film isn't going to be anywhere near as good. One of these guys is not who they seem. One of these guys is the undercover cop, and to an extent, it plays on the type of things like Serpico, Dog Day Afternoon, those type of movies, classic 70s crime thrillers that they just don't make anymore. And I think even there's elements of the Anderson tapes in there as well, and things like that, where you look at what's happening around a crime, and then actually what you see is a story that isn't the crime itself, it's the repercussions of the crime. So Reservoir Dogs is great. I first owned a copy of Reservoir Dogs when I bought a bootleg VHS from a porno shop, of all places, in Brighton in late 1994, because you couldn't buy the VHS. Somebody had copied the American video, smuggled it into the UK, and lo and behold, there we were. I think it was £10. It was a terrible copy, but I had Reservoir Dogs that I could own and watch. So, yeah, number 6, there you go. Now, number 5, lots of people, number 5 is alive, but lots of people will go, oh, number 5, why is this number 1? Well, the reason it isn't number 1 is because he's made better films since, actually. Much better films. Number 5 is, of course, the one which everybody knows that launched 1,000 posters in the 90s, Pulp Fiction. I think Pulp Fiction was, when I saw Pulp Fiction, I was like, they don't make movies like that anymore, do they? Because what you had with Pulp Fiction was a guy that was making a movie as a roller coaster ride. Lots of people made movies like that, but none of them really succeeded. You have things like Jurassic Park, but they were cynical, big budget movies with non-submersible units in them. And Kubrick said if you had 6 non-submersible units, you had a viable movie. But those units, they were action sequences. What you didn't have is a sense of a guy who was as adept at the medium as he was at the message. And Pulp Fiction was a film that was not only you were watching somebody break the medium, it was like cinema as jazz, really. The way in which he stole things from Sergio Leone, for example. The idea of putting text on the screen that tells you certain things, playing with the format, playing with the narrative, introducing bits of information, playing scenes in different ways. So, for example, the hold-up scene in Pulp Fiction is shown twice. It's shown from 2 different perspectives, as viewed by 2 different people, and the dialogue is different in each one of those because their memories are different. It could also be they thought nobody would ever remember that the line would be different when read by Amanda Plummer at the start than it would from the end. It could be a number of things in there. I think Pulp Fiction is a fabulous film, but it's cliched because it's been cliched by exposure. Too many people think it's his best film, and it isn't actually. It genuinely isn't. It's very, very good. Everything from Django onwards is a stone dead classic, but Pulp Fiction is not, the number one. It was his biggest hit. It's his Wonderwall, so to say. So number four then. Number four. Now the astute of you will already know. We're climbing down now to a certain number. Number four is 2016's The Hateful Eight, and this is a fabulous movie. This, alongside Kill Bill, Inglorious Basterds, and Jackie Brown, and to an extent, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, they're all films about tension and release. And one of the things that Quentin has become a master at, and he demonstrates it in this and in Inglorious Basterds as well, is the concept of something bad is coming down the track, and you can see it coming down the track, but you can't tell how far away it is from coming down the track. And the whole film is about a suspense of tension, knowing that at some point all bloody fucking hell is going to break loose, as Arnold said in Commando, but not yet. And it's almost like a Connect 4 game or a jigsaw. You have to wait for all the pieces to be in place. You have to wait for everything to land perfectly, and then all of a sudden the trap springs, the door is opened, and everything goes off. I saw this Wednesday, I think, and I got to be honest, I loved it. It's been a long time since I've seen it. I saw it at the cinema first. It was a film that didn't show at that many cinemas. And there was a 70mm version of it that had different shots and cuts in it, that had an overture and an intermission and all that type of stuff. And I saw that at the cinema when I was travelling for work, and I'm like, this is bloody brilliant. But the cinema was about 200 miles away from my house, and I was like staggered that you couldn't see this film in the cinema. It surprises me, because I would have thought, well, my music taste, my movie taste, they aren't that obscure, aren't that difficult. Why the hell aren't people showing this movie at the cinemas? Anyway, doesn't matter. What matters is The Hateful Eight is, in my opinion, it's a masterful piece of suspense. It's got some wonderful asides in it. It all makes sense. If you watch it, everything lines up nicely. And it's a film that rewards repeated viewings. And at the same point, it's a film that also is about, again, it's that film about revenge for an event that someone believes has been bestowed upon them that is undeserved. Of course, if you watch The Hateful Eight, you'll realise actually they had it coming. They deserved what was about to happen to them. They just didn't think they did because they wanted to get away with it. But it's it's a great movie, and there's something very satisfying about seeing bad guys getting shot in the face, which you will see in later ones. This one, by the way, The Hateful Eight, features one of the last original scores by one of the very best film composers of all time. I might do a ranking of film composers at some point, but one of the best film composers of all time, Ennio Morricone. And Ennio Morricone's score, which is for The Thing here, because of the rush that The Thing had for release, he wrote the score before he'd seen the whole of the movie, and parts of his score weren't used in the final movie because, well, I don't know, whatever the reason was, maybe they ran out of time. So parts of his score for The Thing are on The Hateful Eight as well. Number three. So there's 3 films left. What's it going to be? Well, film 3, and this is 2 films at the same time. So the astute of you will know it is Kill Bill Parts Uno and Deux. I watched this recently. I also watched the fan edit of The Whole Bloody Affair that takes the various versions from the Japanese DVDs and stuff and repieces it back together. This is epic in every way, shape or form. Kill Bill, for those of you who don't know, I'm not going to go too spoilery into it. It's about killing Bill. And not just Bill, but Bill's henchman, after a terrible and unjustifiable thing happened to the bride. One thing I do like about Quentin's films is, in terms of the gender politics of it, is that he's very clear that the patriarchy is generally made out of cruel fucking morons who deserve everything that's coming to them. It's in Death Proof, it's in Django, it's in Hateful Eight to an extent, it's certainly in Kill Bill. And this is an epic tale around what happens when, revenge is your guiding light. And by the way, the revenge that is bestowed upon people is most definitely deserved, and it is most definitely long overdue. It's a fabulous, epic tale where you just strap in and you go with it, and you learn this story. Now, of course, breaking the film into 2 parts is, I think, the right thing to do. because the the story has two very distinct flavours to it, and the right point to split it was the point which it was at. Unfortunately, this film, like a number of Quentin's films, was touched by the horrible hand of Harvey Weinstein, renowned sex predator and all-round irredeemable human potato, who just makes me sad when I stick his movies on, or more correctly, these movies, and it says a Harvey Weinstein thing, and I'm like, damn, I wish we could have just escaped that, and that had not happened. But so be it. Maybe, maybe he got what was coming to him. I don't know. What I do know is that Kill Bill Part 1 and 2, fucking great. There, that's a subtle way of describing it. So number 2. So there's only 2 films left now. What's number 1 and what's number 2? Well, what I will do, I haven't shown you this yet, the Quentin Tarantino Double X 2011 Blu-ray box set. This has 8 movies in it, and it has a number of bonus discs on, and it has this fabulous packaging here. So it has Reservoir Dogs, there's Where True Romance Sits, there's Pulp Fiction, there's Jackie Brown, Kill Bill Part 1 and 2. By the way, all of these discs are ports of the previously or contemporaneously released Blu-ray editions, and then we have Death Proof, Inglorious Basterds, bonus disc 1, which is, I think it's Film Critics Talking for 5 hours, which I have watched while I was doing some housework, and then bonus disc 2, which is a bunch of stuff about the making of his movies and that type of thing. So there's only 2 left now. Number 2, should not be too much of a surprise to you. Number 2 is Inglorious Basterds, in my opinion. I loved this film when I saw it. I thought maybe it's Quentin Tarantino's masterpiece. Now, I've slightly changed my mind with time and maturity, but over the course of his career, Quentin has generally touched upon every genre that he's interested in. You could argue that he's touched upon both horror, with From Dusk Till Dawn. The area that he hasn't perhaps touched upon, which I would like to have seen, is sci-fi. But what the other area is, and I've seen a lot of these movies, and I watched a lot of them when I was growing up, is the World War II Men on a Mission movie. Things like Guns from Navarone, and The Eagle Has Landed, and Where Eagles Dare, and Eagle, 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 even though it doesn't exist. Any film with the words eagle in is probably a war movie. Von Ryan's Express, for example. The Battle of the Bulge, A Bridge Too Far, Went the Day Well, all those type of things. World War II is fertile ground for movie makers, and Inglorious Basterds is, I think, possibly the most enjoyable of Quentin's movies, primarily because Brad Pitt plays a character whose job it is to get Nazi scalps, and it's unambiguous about the fact that Nazis are the fucking bad guys. If we can bring back one thing from history, it would be the idea that fascists are the fucking baddies. Please, can we bring that back? As opposed to thinking about legitimate concerns and how we should give them the oxygen of publicity to show how, horrible their views are. No, they're fucking Nazis, guys, alright? Steven Spielberg was right in burning their faces off in Raiders of the Lost Ark, and Inglorious Basterds is right in shooting their faces off whenever you get a chance to do it. Sorry, if you're a Nazi, don't watch this, okay? Just don't, because I do not like you. But no, Inglorious Basterds is a fabulous attempt at a long-paced, a long revenge that lasts a long time, that lets you know that hurt never forgets. And it's quite satisfying, because the end of it, you see someone getting their face blown off, and that someone is someone who you will not miss, who you definitely have heard of from history, and you kind of go, I wish that had been what really, really happened. It's a fabulous tale of someone having to pretend to be someone they're not in order to stay alive, and then from that going forward and slowly and carefully concocting a manner of revenge, well, not even revenge, it's kind of a justice upon the people that terrorized and destroyed their lives. Like any sane human being that spent some time living in the so-called real world, I've had experiences where I've wished revenge upon people. I haven't done anything about it because I'm fundamentally lazy and a good human being, and living well is the best revenge. And to me, the best form of revenge is to create a distance between yourself and that other person, the distance being normally several hundred miles, and of course making deliberate efforts to avoid that particular person. But in this film, yeah, the Nazis get their comeuppance, and I tell you, it's bloody satisfying to see them getting their faces blown off by people. And sometimes, I just want a film where the bad guy gets what's coming to them and they get what they've deserved. So, yes, Inglorious Basterds is most definitely the number two on my list of Quentin Tarantino movies. A film where the people that deserve it get what they truly, truly deserved, of course. And that means I have to put this back into the disc. But you will notice one face on here that belongs to another film, and that other film is Jackie Brown. Jackie Brown is my favourite Quentin Tarantino movie, and it's my favourite Quentin Tarantino movie for reasons. The reasons being is that the performance anxiety that you have after Pulp Fiction, everybody thinks, oh, you've got to make something amazing, you've got to do something that turns the world inside out. No, Quentin Tarantino just goes, no, I'm not going to do that. I am going to do a kind of a modern day homage to the blaxploitation movies that clearly spent a lot of time watching. Jackie Brown is not a film about revenge. It is a film about where somebody is given an opportunity and they see an opportunity and they take that opportunity, and that opportunity gives them the satisfaction that they have been craving all their life. There's an element of wish fulfillment around that. Jackie Brown is an air hostess. Air hostesses probably don't make huge amounts of money. Sometimes careers don't go the way that you want them to. Things don't go the way you want them to. You kind of end up thinking like Obi-Wan Kenobi in Revenge of the Sith, the bit where they get trapped in the crowd. Hang on, we're smarter than this. And there's a bit in Jackie Brown where you just kind of suddenly realise some people really value money and some people really don't. And the people that don't value money aren't going to miss it in the way in which people that do value money are going to appreciate it. So, yes, there's an element of crime and deception and heists and all of that, but at the same point it's a delicately constructed spring. It's like watching a huge like mouse traps or dominoes things where you kind of watch them and you see the ball and it goes there and there and there and there. Jackie Brown is, we spent 2.5 hours watching someone make this enormous, fantastic, beautiful machine, and then they sneak it away from underneath somebody's nose and they get away with it in a way that nobody can prove, and it's immensely satisfying to see. It is also like Inglorious Basterds, like Kill Bill. It's a refreshing film to see because it isn't just a stale, pale white male again talking about the same old things. Oops, sorry, talking about myself. But again, most films have boring white dudes as the leads, and it is wonderfully refreshing to see a film that doesn't have a boring white dude as the lead, but has a powerful, empowered, intelligent person that has been underestimated by society, achieving what they hoped they were able to engineer. A lot of these films are, I suppose, wish fulfillment in one respect. You get the money, you get the girl, you get the baddies, you get what you think you deserve, in a sense that things are right and fair. But Jackie Brown operates on very, very low stakes. The amount of money is big, but it's not enormous. The steps that are taken in there are not, they're not blowing up the Death Star level. It's very low key. And again, where Quentin has become a master of his craft is in around the tension and the release. Is about setting up all of the doors and then all the traps and then letting the traps happen. And then you're watching and you go, oh, you really need to do that. Then I hope that happens. Then yeah, that happens. Then that happens. And it all works, and it works out wonderfully. I love Jackie Brown. It's my favourite of his films. I think after the rampaging roller coaster that was Pulp Fiction, it was perhaps to a lot of people disappointing. But it isn't disappointing at all. It's just a completely different film that doesn't operate on the same level. This is not the blockbuster that people expect, but this is the film that where you think about 25 years later, and it is 25 years since Jackie Brown, which is pretty scary to think about. You look at it and you go, yeah, they made that. It's not a film that I think anybody else would have made, and what a shame, actually, because the world needs more films like this, which don't have boring white dudes with names like Sam Worthington in. It needs more films which represent the world as it is, and not the world as the white dudes that have the money want the world to be. So there you go. So that's the ranking of the Quentin Tarantino movies. Very quickly then, I suppose I should probably revisit that ranking and talk about the films. Were I thinking about them in the context of everything? CSI is number 17. It's not great. Destiny Turns on the Radio is probably number 16. Again, not so great. Killing Zoe is, I don't even know where I've stuck the disc for that, so I can't show you the box. But again, Killing Zoe is probably about number 15. And then we've got Sin City, which is, number 14, 15. Natural Born Killers, let's say that's a 13. From Dusk Till Dawn, really enjoy it. That's about 11. Four Rooms is a 12. From Dusk Till Dawn is definitely better than Four Rooms. True Romance, let's make that a number 10. Death Proof is 9. I think actually I'd probably put Death Proof lower down. And then obviously it's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Django Unchained, Reservoir Dogs, Pulp Fiction, and the Hateful Eight, of course. And then, as we have just seen, Kill Bill, Inglorious Basterds, and my favourite Quentin Tarantino movie, Jackie Brown. So there you are, 40 minutes of me talking about movies. If you've made it to the end, well done. Again, you've deserved. You've got a well-earned cup of tea and a biscuit ahead of you, and thank you for making it this far. Don't forget to subscribe. I do need my subscribers because I might possibly get a whole 14p out of this account at some point. And in the meantime, take care of yourselves and each other. Stay beautiful. I'm off to watch some movies. Okay, bye.